The UK is going to teach boys respect. That's the news that the UK government is releasing. And this, to explain this story properly, we have to go into a bit of lore. And the lore is that there was a show on Netflix. It was maybe almost a year ago called Adolescence. And it was like a 4-part show. And essentially it was about a young, very cute looking white boy in the UK who gruesomely murdered a little girl. And he did so in the street, and it's sort of a shock and awe series where you're actually surprised that the boy is being accused of it, and then once they reveal that it's pretty obvious he did it, it's like everyone else is shocked, and then it shows the effect on the family and the community and whatnot. And this show kind of played into a narrative that already existed, that Western men and boys hate women. And they hate women, and they want to kill women, and they are the ones responsible for the quote-unquote epidemic of violence against women. Never mind the fact that there may or may not be a certain group of newcomers who have a propensity for this sort of thing. But that's not the subject of today, so we're just going to ignore that and pretend it doesn't exist, just like the UK government. So, to get into this properly, the UK government actually responded to this show in the moment, because it was a very popular show. It was a very shocking show. There were many articles written about it. And honestly, I watched it, and I found it pretty boring, but that's all UK shows. Like, British shows have always been boring. So that's not to critique what it's doing, but essentially it was a particular narrative that people like Andrew Tate, who is actually not so popular these days as much, I think, but overall is the inventor, you could say, of the manosphere, a way of thinking, a cult of personality, one could say, of basically men and boys listening to manly-looking men and boys who have lots of money and sleep with lots of women and have big muscles. And they preach a kind of masculinity that is more traditional, or I shouldn't say more traditional, because modern Western society does not have a masculinity to preach. There is no such thing. It is evil. They don't want it. So the manosphere, it preaches the only masculinity available, which is partly why it has become as popular as it has, even though it's not the focus of things these days until now. So that gives you a bit of a sense of the lore. But the other part is that after the show came out and was very popular, the UK government, which is under a leftist prime minister, I believe they call it Labour there, and the prime minister is Keir Starmer, but not the point, is that he came on TV and he said that this show, it points out something very important about our society, and we need to really reflect on this and do something about it. And that they would start showing the show in all schools everywhere, supposedly to try to prevent violence against women or something of the like. And then there was silence. Then the whole subject kind of disappeared into the ether, and no one was really talking about it. And apparently, according to, I think it was a UK Times article, sorry, I'm going to sneeze, 1 second. Okay, according to the UK Times article, the government was in negotiations about how they were going to implement this anti-manosphere policy. And they had been negotiating for many months, and now they've come to the conclusion that they should do all the most radical things. And the most radical thing, it seems, is that they're going to teach the boys to respect the girls in school. They're going to make it a curriculum, that they're going to have the boys learn how to call out misogyny and respect women. And of course, it doesn't go into true detail about how this goes. But when I saw this, I already knew the issue. Never mind the fact that it was likely more of a symbolic political move rather than something they're actually going to expect to make changes in the society due to perhaps an aforementioned unknown group of unknown origin that definitely doesn't perpetrate most of these new violence against women claims. Besides that, there is a, what's that? They want to tell, I guess we're just going to skip right to it because I'm losing my train of thought a bit. This is a big subject and an important one. That they're going to tell the UK boys to respect girls. Now, I don't know how many boys you've dealt with, but when you tell a boy, especially a kid, to do something that they don't want to do, but more importantly, to believe something that they don't want to believe, that they don't believe, it does not tend to go well. It doesn't tend to work. I know, this is shocking. But beyond even the propensity of young boys not to listen to things that their female and definitely not cringeworthy teachers tell them. I'm not a fan of school, by the way. You are asking them to learn to, quote unquote, respect. Respect is not taught. I have heard this many times as a kid, and even now, and when I was in college, they had similar things like this, similar initiatives about basically guys protecting women, which, maybe there's some merit to that, but the idea that you're going to teach the violence out of the violent is pretty absurd. Because it's not as if any guy, and it's not as if any young kid doesn't know these things. What you think the young kid, if we were to take the adolescence show example, where he stabs the girl to death on a street, really, you think he didn't know? He didn't understand it? Because they sure represented him as a sociopath in the end. And all these boys, these young boys in these UK schools, they know. They know that they probably shouldn't be hurting girls, and girls shouldn't be hurting boys. There's no reason to make it all about boys. But they know these basic morals, or at least they know that other people expect them to follow these basic morals. They don't know that those morals are good, and that's the issue. You cannot tell someone what is good. You just can't. It doesn't work, especially from the middling authority position of a middle-aged teacher. You're not going to play some cringe-inducing video like they did in college, which is, and this is actually standard procedure in most colleges, where they would make you go through a course. I think it was a violence against women's course, if I'm remembering correctly. Women course, if I'm remembering correctly. And they would say, they'd give you examples where you would see a guy is talking mean to a woman. A guy is with a drunk woman. What do you do about it? Oh, that was dramatic. And all these examples would have you would have to go through an interactive thing where essentially you're supposed to stand up for the women, you're supposed to help them, and you're not supposed to go out with them drunk, because it was mostly about taking women home who are drunk and then them either being validly raped or accusing you of rape. I'm not really sure which one they were trying to go for there, but nevertheless, it is to say, there is not a single guy on earth who watched those videos and was like, well, gee, I didn't know that. Now that I know that I shouldn't sleep with drunk women, and I also shouldn't let other guys kidnap vulnerable women, well, now that they told me that, now I'm going to do something different. No, you're not. What are you talking about? It's this really absurd claim that they don't know if these violent men, if these people with a propensity for violence, if they just knew that violence was bad, they would stop being violent. They would stop doing all the bad things in the world. Because really, we need to just tell them that it's wrong. Have you really? As if these boys and these men have never had conversations in their life, as if they've never seen what the social environment wants to demand of them. Whether the demand comes through is another issue, but wants to demand of them for sure. These young boys that they're going to put into the UK schools, and they're going to train them against misogyny, and they're going to train them against violence against women and to stand up against it. And it's really the same thing as the college anti-date rape stuff that I was talking about earlier. It's the same thing, and it will have the same effect, which is that all of those boys will go into class, their teacher will say, you shouldn't be violent against women. It's a really weird accent, but the point still goes. And every single boy in the class is going to roll their eyes. Just picture it in your head. It's going to happen. They're going to roll their eyes. And then one of them is going to roll their eyes and their teacher is going to say that they can go to the principal's office because they don't respect women. And then every other boy is going to stop rolling their eyes, but is always going to think lesser of women, is always going to think lesser of girls. Because, you can't force someone, especially a young boy, to just respect something because you demand it of them. It simply doesn't work. It was never going to work. This is one of those things, like men are not women, that is just blatantly obvious. And I think any parent with any rationality would tell you that. Hey kid, don't throw the ball, don't fight. I've seen this actually many times where young kids, their parents will tell them, hey, stop hitting each other. Hey, don't push them in the pool, all these things. And what do 2 minutes later? They're doing the same thing again because they don't take seriously what their parent is telling them. Because their parent is saying, oh my God, something terrible might happen if you fall in the pool. And the kid, having fallen in the pool 20 times already, is like, in his head at least, like, really, Mom? Come on. Nothing's gonna happen. Like the risks, young kids don't have properly developed prefrontal cortexes, I hear you say. And to that answer I say, that doesn't mean they're completely stupid. The young kid can still judge. You trust your young kids to walk around the house. If they couldn't judge what were obvious dangers, they'd simply run straight into corners at every given turn. And now some of them do. But, that's really young, let's be honest. We're talking about like adolescent kids. We're talking about teenagers, if we're being really straight with it. And the idea that they are just going to turn around and listen to the same cringe-inducing things that have never worked for any parent, have never worked for nearly any college student. Like, fun fact, at my college, because everyone would be given this video, and there was actually still a frat. There was a mainstream frat endorsed by the college that was like known as the date rape frat. I totally don't remember the name, but it was like everyone knew it, and the girls like avoided their parties, and it was like a whole thing, and they all knew it, and the college did nothing. So it's like, really, you expect the thing. Do you know what the definition of insanity is? Insanity, technically, I've heard the definition is when you try the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That is what's about to happen here, is that young boys being fed values by unauthoritative authority figures will not listen to those values and will likely do the exact opposite. It's only happened a billion other times, and it's going to happen here too. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter to the government of the UK. Like, it doesn't matter to any of us, if we're being really honest, because they, as I've said, are not going to address the real issues in their society causing the violence against women, or more importantly, the lack of policing of it. But they don't really care, because this is a symbolic point. Because what they're going to do is they're going to make these policies, because there's two parts of it actually in the article, it said. And of course they haven't fleshed it out yet, and the devil is always in the details. That they're going to teach boys not to be misogynistic, But the other one is they are going to warn parents and teachers about the warning signs. Too many warns there. They're going to warn about the warning signs of a boy becoming misogynistic. They're going to stop, and another part of it was like censorship. And those two are really the thing. Is that essentially they're going to make it so the boys can't watch Andrew Tate. And I would reference again, do you really think that's going to work? Young men, famous, really famous for when they are told not to do something and then they are banned from doing it. They are famous for obeying those bans and not doing the thing. Because, museums definitely don't have glass around all of their exhibits because people will just respectfully not touch it when there's a do not touch sign. Like, it's so asinine. It's not going to work. This is the reason that people liked Andrew Tate, because everyone hated him, because society tried to ban him and put him in jail, And the young boys love that. They love the Crusaders. They love the people who are, to use Andrew Tate's own language, who are fighting against the Matrix. Not even that they've all watched the Matrix movies, but it's still the system. Young boys are anti-system. They are rebellious. They get more rebellious as teenagers. They are not, anyone who is anti-system is someone who they at least perk up an ear for. And if you make them the ultimate example of being anti-system, and they're even remotely displeased with their own lives, they're going to gravitate towards it. Just like there's a reason Andrew Tate has like 10 million followers on social media or more. Or the new trend, Nick Fuentes, who is not exactly a manosphere figure in the same way that Andrew Tate is, but is nevertheless even more anti-system, even more hated by the system, and even more popular, I think, now. So this initiative, like similar initiatives that have been admittedly less forceful in other parts of the world, the UK is more fond of using the police to crack down on free speech, but among other activities. But it will end in the same way these other attempts have ended. It will only make the problem worse. So if you actually believe that the problem should be solved, you can't address it through these foolhardy, we're gonna make a law, and that law says that young boys can't be mean to young girls, and that's gonna solve everything. No, it's not. It's not going to solve anything, and it's only going to make it worse. But truth be told, I don't think they want to solve it, as I've said one time before. I don't think they care to solve it. It's a pure political power grab. It is made to pave the way for eventual larger censorship and punishment industries for anyone who disagrees with the left. Because the left is the anti-manosphere party. They are the anti-manosphere, let's say it. Everything about their ideology is anti to what the manosphere pushes forward. They are feminist, they are pro-immigrant, they are pro-everything. I guess immigrant isn't really fitting there as much, but it is to say that everything the manosphere pushes forward, the left hates. And therefore, this is really, I think it's more of a brazen crackdown on kids believing things that the government doesn't want them to. So that way, what will follow is likely, oh, your kid listened to Andrew Tate and he's been frowning at at girls in class and not listening to his female teacher. I think he needs some counseling. I think he needs some detention. He needs extra attention from the teachers. He needs his social media monitored. He needs, he's not liking being monitored like this and singled out. Well, I guess we better put him on some drugs, which definitely will calm him down permanently, which is how the drugs work, unfortunately. So that's what I think about the new UK crusade against boys thinking bad thoughts. It will not end well, and it's not really supposed to end well, and that's why we should really be against any attempts like this, because we don't live, as I've said in nearly every video, we do not live in a civil society. We do not have a civil government. This includes Europe. And when you don't have those things, I think you have to take if you remember Game of Thrones, there was a character called Sansa Stark. And one thing she learned from this other very mischievous character named Littlefinger was that whenever you're trying to figure out what someone's motives are, think of the worst. What's the worst reason they have for doing what they're doing? And that is how you have to think about governments around you. That's unfortunately, because it's the only way to protect yourself against what they do. Because even if they don't mean the worst, even if some people in government do mean to make things better, they will make things worse. Because they either want to avoid the consequences later on, or later on for their own actions, so they'll just do other things to make it even worse, or they actually don't care about them. And they are focused on their policy because consequences, as is well known in politics, are something for the next elected party to deal with, not the current one. So if you like this video or hugely disliked it, please give it a like or a comment, and subscribe if you want to hear more. See you next time. Bye.